Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studio inside Mac 6 Conscious Workspace in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. I'm your host and Phoenix Business Radio studio owner, Karen Nowicki, and I am very excited about our conversation today. We have invited back Karen Loomis and Camilla Ross to continue our conversation about racism in business and the arts. And we're also going to have Wendy Williams join us as well. Today, we're having a conversation around the myth of the angry Black woman. As we do with every show here at Business RadioX, we just see where the conversation takes us and hope that we will lend some insight, some real-life experiences, and some action for each of us moving forward so that we can all really come to a place of equality and taking good care of each other. Karen Loomis, you are the gal who we have to thank for this opportunity. If you didn't listen to our first segment, which I hope you will, Karen had reached out to me and said, hey, could we have a conversation, an on-air conversation about racism in small business and the arts? And I said, of course, let's do that. I would love to start with you today, if we could, Karen, and have you give a little bit more context for this conversation. And then as the four of us agreed, we thought we'd each take about 15 minutes or so to kind of share our perspective, our insight, our background, and then, just collaborate and talk and ask questions of each other, maybe even challenge each other a little bit and see where we go for the hour.
Thank you, Karen. So obviously this has all been triggered by George Floyd. Hello, Wendy. Wendy's coming.
Hey, go ahead and we'll bring her in while you're chatting.
So where I got with the George Floyd and everything wasn't quite the same as many others, but instead where I wanted to really focus when I thought about this is what can I bring to the table? I'm not going to be one out there going to a protest, going in downtown Phoenix or doing things like that. Where is my power? And my power is in my voice and in my community. And so I thought, let me bring together African Americans, expose you to our thinking and our perspective and our view of the United States of America, not only as it is today, but how it was during our professional lives. And we wanted to really help you if you don't have a community of African Americans. And what I'm finding is that I'm coming across studies that are showing, and it's not a slam on you so much as a white individual, it's just the reality that 91% of you do not have an African American in your social circle. So I thought, if that's the case, then how can we bring you information to help you change your perspective on something that you've never experienced, or you may not have had your close friends share those experiences with you. I know that I don't often share those experiences with my close circle who are significantly white. Pretty much 90 some odd percent are white because that's the community I live in, but that's no excuse to keep yourself very closed off. And so by having these conversations on air, I thought we could bring the perspective of what it's like as an African American, not only in the business world, small business world, but also why we even got where we are. And so for myself, I've talked about, and I'll have the others talk about their background because I think it's important for you to understand where we come from, and that where we come from, all of us come from a different place, just the same as you. But yet all of our experiences, even though we may come from so very different places, our shared experiences are very similar. And that's when you start to say, and that's even when I started to say to myself, well, holy crap. I thought I was the only one that was experiencing these things. And a perfect example is one of the reasons why I am a two-time business owner. I had a 20-year business in the fitness industry. One of the reasons why I had that business is once I got done over-educating myself with a master's and a BS and a bunch of other stuff in the exercise science world, because I thought that that was going to give me the edge. Once I got done doing that and spent a couple years, in the community, I realized the opportunities are not there. I'm not finding the opportunities. How is this possible? I'm not finding the opportunities. So then I went, oh, well, dang it. You spent 9 years in higher education, and it's just a damn shame you didn't think about taking any marketing courses. So, I mean, this is the reality, and this is the lousy advice we get as we go along.
I feel that pain.
So,
welcome to college.
So, because I embrace education so much, and that my parents have made that a real platform for us as African Americans to stand on, I went, well, dang, I'm going back to school, because that's what I do really well, is I educate myself and I go back to school. And so that's how I got into the marketing world. But again, the same thing happened as I get into the marketing world. I've worked for agencies, I worked for small printers, I worked for very large corporations. But my common experience in all of that was, man, it was really hard just to get some of the most basic, simple things that others didn't seem to have so many challenges. And I recall when there was a couple different experiences in my corporate world that led me ultimately to leave and become a small business owner. But relative to this experience of the angry Black woman myth, and it's not a myth. Here's what I want to tell you. It's a very real thing. And no matter who you're talking to, whether it's a white individual or a Black individual, their perspectives are very real on this. And so your perspective may be that you find that African American women, because that's what we're talking about, are angry. And what I want to challenge you on with that belief is, are we really angry, or are we just expressive? And are we expressive in a way that you misinterpret because you're not understanding the culture? And while I'm saying this about the culture and kind of grouping us in a category, I understand that not every African American has this perspective. So one of the stories that I want to share with you so that you can kind of have an understanding of why the corporate world really wasn't what it should have been for somebody with my skill set and my education. The story I want to share is about, 3 or 4 executives. We're all sitting in a team room. We're having a conversation about whatever work thing there is that's going on. And at being an African American and being the one in the corporation and being the one who is responsible for anything that faces the customer, I can get a little bit sensitive about the things that we're presenting to our customers that are heavily African American, Hispanic. And so something happened in that meeting where this individual literally blew a gasket of the ugliest kind you've ever seen. And the other 3 of us just sat there at the table watching this individual lose a complete gasket. And it was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And so when I see that kind of thing, I just sat back and watched and let him mellow out. But it wasn't the incident that was the issue. It was the after, where I was asked to apologize to this white man for his outbreak, which I did not, and I do not. I stand a very firm ground, and that can be scary to some. I stand a very firm ground when I make a decision. I hope that those decisions are made with a lot of intelligence behind them. And unless you give me some really good new intelligence that's going to push me off of my decision, I'm probably going to be stubborn, which are some of those descriptive words that are used for the angry Black woman. But here's what I want to leave you with before I kind of move it on to some of my colleagues. The thing I want to share about that, and it's kind of some of the things that I've shared on some of the personal videos I do. When I get angry, you're not going to know. I get really, really quiet, and I most likely will end the conversation and walk out of the room ultimately. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to throw stuff. I'm not going to kick stuff. I'm not going to do any of that angry kind of thing. But I'm still going to stand my ground. And that can be really challenging for some. And I think that's the understanding that I want those of you listening to think about is, are you afraid, or are you just misunderstanding the emotion? Because I just want you to step back for a minute and think about what you're experiencing when you see something like that, and just check your reaction for a moment. Just for a moment, just pause and maybe just do 10 deep breaths like we do in yoga, really deep breaths, and think about it before you let stuff come flying out your mouth or out your fingers. Because what I'm seeing on social media, what I'm experiencing in conversations in today's world shows me that some of you are not ready for this conversation. And until you're ready for this conversation, you're not going to hear anything that's going to push you off of where you're standing right now, because you're really firmly believing that there is an issue with African-American women. So I'll let Camila kind of share her experiences so that maybe that can help you, understand that this is just not a single experience by one person, that this goes on and on.
Absolutely not. It's not a single experience. Camila Ross here, producer, actor, president of the Emerson Theater Collaborative in Sedona, Arizona, and in Mystic, Connecticut. I've got a great group of people I work with. I'll tell you, this angry Black woman syndrome that people talk about is not a myth. Karen, it's funny you mention, things like that. For me, the business world has been a multifaceted type of thing. I deal in a couple of realms. Theater is one realm, and I teach accounting and business classes on the other realm. And it's interesting because, when you're really passionate about something, people, they don't understand the difference between passionate and angry. They sort of group them both together. You know what I mean? And it's not the same. I mean, I've been told, well, I don't understand why you're so angry. Maybe because I've asked you not to do something and you continue to do it, and you decide that you're going to do it and you're not going to listen. So therefore I become the angry Black woman. And so I gladly accept that. And however way, shape, or form that it comes for me, there's just been so many times in my life where I get tired of having to explain to people or say to people, please don't do that. It's inappropriate. And the response is, well, I don't understand why it's inappropriate. It just doesn't matter. They don't listen. And so sometimes it's important for you to step back and just, hear what someone has to say. I've been in the military. And so that's another, area where I think, it's important for the upper echelon to listen and to hear those things. It is a very diverse makeup of people in the military, and it's not always the way people think it should be. There's just been many, many incidents for me. I was in basic training in the Navy, and it was interesting because we had a group of women, and there may have been, 6 African Americans in that entire group of young women at the time.
How many women were there?
Oh,
are we talking hundreds?
Oh no, we're talking about maybe 80.
Okay, thank you.
80 women, but up there in the ranks. But, I was in the barracks, and I had just finished showering and getting dressed and getting ready for my, for whatever we're going to do that day. And I had a young lady, she came up to me and she took my hand and she rubbed my hand. And I'm like, okay, what's this about? So I said, is there something wrong? And she's like, oh, no. I said, well, what's the problem? Oh, I've never seen people like you before.
Oh.
I said, oh, okay. I said, it doesn't come off. Yes, I'm Black, and I didn't know where she came from. And then she explained to me.
You should have asked her where you come from.
I did. And so she told me she was a Midwesterner, and I'm like, okay, I get that. I said, but what's your reasoning? Well, I've never seen people like you before, and I just wanted to see if you changed color. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I know where you sit. And I, proceed to tell her, it doesn't, we don't change color. We don't, change shape. There are many different cultures. And I just tried to explain to her the difference between people, that's a natural thing. But what I think, her thought process is that she had not been in the same space as people of color. So, you can sort of get the gamut of where people sit.
91%.
Yes, that large number. And there's been other circumstances where, people have just did stupid stuff. Can I touch your hair?
How do you wash that? Can you wash it?
Yeah. And so, they would proceed to touch. I'm like, excuse me, please don't touch my hair. Well, you don't have to be so angry about it.
That's usually when I get the trigger.
Okay. And that triggers me. And so I say, excuse me, I'm not angry. I said, you're impeding on my personal space. And I would appreciate if you wouldn't do that. Well, I just don't understand why you people get so angry. Well, I said, well, maybe I get angry because people like you don't listen when I say, please don't touch. And I'm kind about it. And I'm very passionate about it. And they mistake that passionateness for being angry.
I think it's firm. You're really, Camila,
I am firm.
Yeah, I've known you for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years now?
Yeah.
And you are one of the most firm people that I know when it comes to standing your ground. And that is really what I find for most African American women, is that I know that, man, we stand a hard ground. You better come in with some kind of real heavy duty something to get us to shift off of that.
Yeah, but I'm finding that I have to be that way. And it's unfortunate because I can never let that guard, I can never relax because I never know what is coming next. And I'm always in that flux of having to protect myself when I should not have to do that. And it's something as simple as, keeping your personal space, respecting other people's personal space. And it's good to ask.
The only thing I can liken that to is having been pregnant 3 times.
Oh, yes.
That's the only time I could think that somebody would ignore my personal space and just assume that they can come rub my belly, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So gross.
But I don't know that comes from the same place that you're describing. That's the only thing I can liken it to.
That comes from love.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up, because or curiosity,
but more love of First off, I'm not ever doing that. But if I think about the people who have approached me when I was pregnant, it theoretically was, I don't get let me pet your pretty hair. Okay, get closer and it might be ugly for you, but go ahead. I think that's the difference. Is it that?
I think that's what I'm sensing as well.
Yeah.
And a genuine curiosity, but it's still a lack of personal space and respect.
But if I went up to someone who was white, I love your hair. Can I touch this?
Do you ever want to?
No. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I respect people's personal space. If they have, I have a person that I know that has different color hair, and I say, hey, I love that. It looks fabulous on you. I never impede on their space and say, can I touch it?
Well, I don't know what touching has to do with anything. That's the part that I'm confused on.
So I'm very passionate about the stuff that I do and how I work, especially in the work environment. I am very passionate about that. And so they'll say, she's scary sometimes. And I have to take a double take. And I'm like, hello? What is so scary about being passionate about the things that you really enjoy?
And having boundaries.
Right, and having boundaries. Exactly. So they think that because Black people have boundaries that we're, standoffish or we're this or we're that. It's not the case.
But I think we have to have boundaries because of the world we live in. And that's the difference, I believe, in the experience of the Black and the white, is that we have to have strong boundaries because we don't know where the incoming is coming from. We're going to take a hit somewhere. We just don't know when and where. And so you're always prepared for it.
And we're always on guard. And so that's something I think, that we can, really sink into, is being on guard all the time. Why is that? Why do we have to be on guard all the time?
Wendy, welcome.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, ladies. Hey, I just want to add to the conversation, and I'm a truth teller, so I'm going to say something that is an uncomfortable truth, and that is, in the United States, and that's where I have my life experience, so I won't speak to any other countries. Historically, Black people were thought of as non-human, as animals. And that attitude of Black people being less than white people in intelligence, in their humanity, in their behavior, in their intellectual ability, is part of why, often I think unconsciously, white people feel that they can do what they want to do without any impunity, without any boundaries. So this touching of people, exactly as Camila described, if I saw someone with beautiful hair, I tell them they have beautiful hair. I don't walk up and pet them like an animal. But there is an assumption that I can do whatever I want to impulsively to this other person because they're less than. That message is subconscious, but it is constant. And American culture. And I think that's part of why violating personal space is not even considered. It's not even conscious, because there's this underlying message that's been projected in movies and the media and talk from your old relatives and just absorbed in the culture at large that Black people are somehow less than, and therefore they receive a lower degree of respect.
That's deep. Truth.
And I think right now, that pregnant pause that we had was hopefully the pregnant pause that you, the listener, is having right now. The thought, the thinking, I'm sure your initial reaction was, what the hell? But what I want is for you to sit with it and let it creep into your mind later on today, because that's when I get the most value from talking and sharing with people, is later on in the day. So instead of reacting to Wendy and thinking that what she's saying is full of crap, maybe educate yourself. And that's what we're trying to offer here, because Wendy, I know, has many examples of situations where she has not been looked at very favorably. And I do, Wendy, would love to hear you share. I know that if you could share a little bit about your background, because where you come from is a totally different on the technology side. Obviously, we all have a preconceived notion of what that world looks like and the bodies in that world.
Absolutely.
And so perhaps you could share with us what that's like, because I can't share that piece of information. And I'd love it if you could.
Right now, I'm a leadership coach and spiritual teacher, but I have over 25 years experience in corporate America in technology. So I started it as an IT, remember that word, IT, information technology, when I was 18. I'm 51 now, so it's been a very long career. I segued from IT departments into software companies. And technology environments are predominantly white male. So I was often one of only a very small number of women, on top of typically being the only Black person and certainly the only woman of color. You know, I would say 95, maybe 96% of the time in my 25-year career in corporate America and technology. So I was always used to being the 7-up spot, I called myself. Like, that's just me, right by myself, covering the female genre and covering the person of color area. It was just me. And it was interesting. I found there was consistently an attitude of I was only there because of some government program, that it had nothing to do with my merit. So there were very few people who would actually vocalize it, but there were consistently throughout the years. Certain people were bold and would even say, it's affirmative action. Of course, they would say that after affirmative action had been removed from the law books, and it wasn't possible that I was there because of affirmative action. But they were still holding that idea that somehow it was some kind of government force that caused me to be in their presence.
Wow. Yeah.
It had nothing to do with my merit. And I'll just share one experience when I was still in my 20s. So this was about 26 years ago. I was working for a company that I call Stealth Wealth. It was a multi-billion-dollar company that no one had ever heard of before. I happened into it because a former coworker ended up working for that company and recruited me in. There's no other way I could have gotten in except that I knew someone and had a really positive relationship with a new employee that they had there. So I was brought in, and you can hear me speaking. My name is Wendy Williams, which does not sound typically what Americans think of an African American. I have a super, super white name. You can listen to me speaking. I would typically be described as sounding like a white person. So in the age before social media, before anyone could see my face, I was able to rise in my career based on my resume because on paper and on the phone, I am white.
Absolutely.
So I personally have benefited from white privilege before social media. I was able to get into doors that many of my African American colleagues who would have been just as talented or even more talented, if they happened to have an ethnic sounding name, they would not have gotten into the door. So because I had whiteness in me, because of the way that I speak, and it wasn't because of my education. I didn't get my college degrees until I was in my early 30s. So I didn't get my master's degree until I was like 32. I was building my technology career all throughout my 20s. So this was about my real world experience and the talent I brought to the table. And I was constantly being confronted with, there's got to be another reason why you're here. It cannot be because of your hair. So I'll just share one story really quickly, which was astounding. So I was at this company that I call Stealth Wealth, multi-billion-dollar company. Most people still to this day have never heard of because it's B2B instead of B2C. So I'm working in this company. I'm at the corporate headquarters. They have 10 subsidiaries all over the US. I'm on the phone constantly every day with the people working at the subsidiaries. One year, some of the people from the subsidiaries came to the corporate office and they saw me for the first time. And you know what happened? Someone went to the human resources department and told them that I had deceived them because they had no idea I was Black.
Oh, that has to be your fault.
How dare you hide your Black skin?
I said, I'm so sorry I didn't answer the phone with a boombox on my shoulder. Dancing for you. But what? I had to laugh. There was really no other response. And fortunately, my human resources professional that I worked with was laughing as well. I couldn't believe, both of us were in disbelief. But that is the type of ridiculousness that I've had to live with. And that's a really mild story, actually a funny story.
Right.
But I have many stories that were not funny, really consistently diminishing my worth and what I brought to the table.
The thing that the listener needs to understand is that as a Black woman, this is a constant in our world to prove our worth, which is why I think we all overeducate ourselves, become overachievers, those of us who are really strong business-minded people, because what we are trying to do is give you every excuse not to diminish our value and what we can bring to the table.
Absolutely.
And one of the things in one of the first conversations that I had with Wendy, getting to know her, and we were talking, about our backgrounds and instantly kind of bonded over some shared experiences as we do as African Americans. And I will say this to the listener, I am so happy that we are all together and having the opportunity to talk about these things, because literally these are conversations that have never been had before in my world. But the thing Wendy's talking about is every day that we have to prove. And so when Wendy and I were talking about this, I said, one of the great mysteries in my world is I had this phenomenal 10-year corporate career. Everybody's saying when I'm leaving, oh, you'll have no problem finding a job, which I cannot stand. That when I hear that word, right, that phrase right now, it makes me cringe. And a year later, I still hadn't found a job. And of course, you can imagine what's going on in my head. I'm thinking, well, this is ridiculous. Not only have I not found a job, I've had exactly one interview. And I've had exactly one interview with a group that the company ultimately ended up having criminal investigation. So there you go. But anyway, so we were talking about this and I said to her, I just really can't figure out how did I even get hired at that corporate job in the first place? And, and one of the things that I realized is, and I said to her, I said, oh, it's because when I applied there, the director of marketing was a woman. And then Wendy added, and it was pre-social media.
Yeah.
And the reason is I wasn't on LinkedIn until about probably halfway, if not 2/3 of the way through my corporate career. So I really wasn't on LinkedIn. So there really wasn't a lot of my face anywhere. And if that is the case, here I am 9 years removed from leaving my corporate job, and I had been forced into being a small business owner because I had to make it. And like Camila and I were talking about this morning, we were saying, the misunderstanding is about these affirmative action and these other programs is that we want handouts. We don't want any freaking handouts. We want to take care of ourselves. But because the system is so set up against us that you don't even realize, you have no idea how the system has been set up to prevent us from having success. So if we could just remove those systemic issues, in which I say that so ever simply, then we can handle supporting ourselves. That's all we want. And I think about what Dre said the last time we were together, where he said he just wants to be left alone. And that left me kind of going like, I don't want to be left alone because I want business and I need those opportunities. But if I was to interpret that in my little brain, I interpreted it as such that don't give me more affirmative action programs. Don't give me programs. Just get out of my way and let's remove this issue of color on skin.
And give me the resources that I need to
Exactly.
conduct my business
Exactly.
without having to prove to you that I'm worthy of it because, I'm Black. I am educated, yes, but that's not everything. You know what I'm saying? So give me the resources that I need to run my business efficiently and effectively, okay, in the realm in which I'm working. I work in the arts realm.
Wait, the PPP loans didn't help you?
Absolutely not.
Wait, really?
No, because I'm a nonprofit and I have an all-volunteer workforce.
And also you're a micro business.
Okay,
This is
and
what
I'm a
people
small
don't
business.
understand.
We need the funding
Resources.
and the resources to grow our businesses. So that is where my line of question will come into play.
29% African-American approvals, 52% loans are approved for Hispanic, and 69% for if you are a person with white skin. So I don't know what kind of numbers you people need to have come across you to help support what we're saying, that this is not just us whining up here about we need help. And we know
and we're not lazy.
And we know it's hard for you too, but I don't think you really recognize what we're saying is that the system is different for us.
I'm going to say, since I've been in Sedona, I do have to say that the city of Sedona has really stepped up its game and really given me in my business, a lot of support. And my community in which I live in has really stepped up in giving me that support that I need to operate my business efficiently and effectively. And so I'm really grateful for that. And for me, it's difficult when you're in the arts right now, especially where you can't have, people in your venue and things of that sort. So I applied for particular things, that I could, the EIDL. So I did get that, which is a great thing, but it's repayable. You know what I'm saying? And so when you're trying to build your business, you really need those resources where, to get that leg up and to grow your business and have employees. And so having those conversations are so important for small business owners and people of color who have those businesses and need that support. So I'm grateful for the community in which I live in because they have been very supportive. And I know they're going to continue to support the work in which I do, but I'm asking that they look at the whole scope of everything on a governmental level and look at the arts organizations and provide that funding for the businesses that need it, because we supply a lot of resources to restaurants and other businesses to help them grow. The arts organizations are so important. And so I'm asking governments to please give that funding that is needed for educating children as well, because the education system is tough, and so the arts organizations educate children on a grand scale. And so that's what my plea is for, the governors and things to look at the arts organizations and apply that funding where it needs to be.
And I think what we're really all trying to provide is these stories to help you decide what you want to do. Where do you want to take action as a listener? Who are the people in your community that you do want to support? Who do you know? I mean, like if you're one of those that has, you're one of the 91% that does not have a person of color in your close community. I mean, like I said last week, don't run out and try to find, hang on to the closest Black person you can find. I mean, find somebody who speaks your language. And by that, you have to actually have a conversation. And that's where everything starts. And I think that this conversation about the angry Black woman, it's in hope that you will understand that we really, truly have a lot of things to be angry about. But more than anything, we have a lot of energy that we want to give to our businesses. But every business, in order to get somewhere, has taken an incredible amount of support by other people and other businesses. And just don't forget about us, because we're an important part of the community. While I offer marketing services, the problem with that is we have these big companies out there doing marketing and advertising to African Americans, but they themselves have no diversity within. I mean, right? So, what you want to talk about, if you want to push my buttons and see some passion, is ask me about advertising agencies and how many people of color that they have, but yet they're cranking out advertising with African Americans in it. I mean, so there's a lot of things for us to be angry about, but what we really want to do is direct our anger in a positive manner. And I think that's really what Wendy's trying to do with her coaching business, is to try to get people to, really use their heart and their brain, not just their brain and not just their bias. Do you want to add anything to that, Wendy?
Yes. Actually, I want to steer the conversation into what small business owners that are listening can do and to help change the environment. So a couple different things I want to say. Every human has bias. It's the way our brains are wired. So we absorb an enormous amount of information through all of our senses, and we have a judgment mechanism called bias that allows us to make quick decisions and understand what our choices will be very quickly. And we also have a neocortex. Okay, so humanity is evolving on the neurological level, and the neocortex is a part of our brain that allows us to make executive decisions beyond knee-jerk, biased, and subconscious even decision-making, like we do with our limbic brain. So even when you as a small business owner may have an initial reaction of resistance or bias or discomfort, allow yourself to evolve. Click in the use of your neocortex. Just take a breath, relax, and really just ask yourself, is there truly anything to fear here? Or if I'm feeling uncomfortable, is it okay for me to feel uncomfortable? Do I have to run from discomfort? Is it okay for me to feel uncomfortable? And this is how we can put it into practical use as business owners. In the tech community, there's a big practice that's really, really common when interviewing people. And that is asking the question, is this person a cultural fit? Mm-hmm. Well, people of color live and operate and behave in different cultural styles than our Caucasian siblings. In my studies in psychology, when we went into multicultural counseling, we realized that people of color are more direct and tend to speak truth more readily than our Caucasian siblings. So when, if you are Caucasian and you feel discomfort because a colored person is animated or excited, realize that that's just a cultural difference in communication and connection and relating. It's just a cultural difference. There is nothing to fear. So expand your idea of a cultural fit. Maybe expand it just to include being an American. We've always called ourselves a melting pot. Well, allow yourself to commit to that American ideal of upholding the melting pot. and allowing yourself to feel discomfort with something that's different than the way you do it. It's just a small expansion, but it's making space for people to be who they are without having to conform to whatever is going to make you more comfortable.
Absolutely.
Especially when it's something that is not causing harm. So a person being really animated and really excited, it's just a different way of relating and connecting and responding to information in the environment. It's nothing to fear. So if you're feeling uncomfortable, it's okay. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. You don't have to be afraid of feeling uncomfortable. Know that it's just a different cultural approach and that you are actually strong enough to handle it. And if you're strong enough to handle it, your world expands.
Beautifully put,
you become a better person. You become more skillful and equipped to handle anybody that comes into your life. It is beneficial for you to expand your comfort zone. Isn't that why we're all here? To grow and be our best selves. You cannot grow without discomfort. So just be okay with being uncomfortable. I promise it's temporary. You get used to it. We all do.
Well, you know what's nice, Wendy,
really quickly
is that culture descends a whole lot of things. Culture is beautiful. That's what the world is. It's this big, huge cultural, beautiful thing. And when you start picking apart different cultures, it makes that a whole lot different in the way you see the world. I look at the world and there's so many beautiful people in it. I can't help but get excited about learning. And when you travel and you go to different places, I love it. And the cultures that's there, I respect it, I honor it, and I try to be a part of it. And so that's what makes me happy when I'm around other cultures. I get bored very quickly with the same thing. And I think the reason why I'm gravitate towards the arts because it allows me to have that perfect space where I can bring in all different cultures of people. And when we create, I love hearing the different ideas that come from different people and different cultures so that I can make the very best show that I can. And I love that about culture because that's what it gives us. It gives us a level playing field in which to grow as people.
But I have to, sorry, Karen. We're talking about two different types of culture here, and I think it's really important to distinguish the two. We're talking about culture of ethnicity, culture of living. We're not talking about, Wendy was specifically talking about the culture of a corporation, and a culture of a corporation is a really different thing because the culture of a corporation is one of we need everybody to put your square peg in your square hole and move on. Square peg in your square hole, move on. Corporations are not, and I'm not saying that this is the way they should be built, but corporations today, because 90% are led by white, are built on the idea that we can't have different beliefs and thinking in our corporation because we need everybody to play their role because that's how this ship rolls.
Not my ship.
No, but that's the corporation issue. And so what I'm saying is when you talk about the culture and whether somebody's a culture fit, oftentimes you think about an HR person is thinking, is this person going to get fired down the road? Because if this person gets fired down the road, it means that's one more person I have to look for, and I already have a lot of people to look for. So you have to look at it from a perspective of a corporation is meant to just have cogs, whereas a small business is really much better equipped for this diversity in thinking, the diversity in the ability to try things. And
Absolutely.
And the reason we need big corporations, we need small businesses, we need all of this in our economy to make it healthy. And they all serve their role and they all have their part. And I think that that's why a lot of African-American women get pushed to the small business realm. And we often become small business owners out of not because we really wanted to do it, but because we had to do it in order to survive. And I'm not saying I don't enjoy being a small business owner. I don't want ever to step foot in a corporation again. But sometimes there's the financial decisions that you make where you're like, gosh, I really, it would really be nice not to have to worry about money every day. Right. I mean, and that's the reality. But on the other hand, I know that my health would be destroyed if I had to go back to a corporation. So, those are the plays. And it's not much different, I think, for some of you as in the listener who are Caucasian, but it's just this extra element that we have to deal with as African Americans, Hispanics, or even Native or Asian Americans.
Yeah, it's the truth. But I like to, for my company is a small company, but I tell you what, my company is really diverse. And I'm not talking about a lawyer, a doctor, or this or that. I'm talking about diverse. I have African Americans, I have Caucasians, I have Latinos,
But that's because you're the leader and that's what you bring. And that's part of the problem with these corporations. When you have leaders that are led by white people, they're only going to bring the white mentality because that's growth and that's money and that's what, Wall Street wants. So,
but I want a community that's rich in love.
There is a little bit of a difference. Like there's diversity in corporations, right? Big corporations that are in industries that don't have a lot of innovation. Let's just say banking. Of course, it's being disrupted right now because of tech. But typically, they could go decades without a whole lot of change, right? Insurance, they can go on without a lot of change.
Automotive.
Insurance, right. Those are the corporations that are going to want to keep the status quo. But when it comes to tech, nothing trumps innovation. Like you got to change, you got to move, you got to be creative. In order to have innovation, you have to have diversity.
Yes, you do.
Innovation requires creativity. Creativity is stimulated by having different stimuli in your environment, different perspectives. That's why creatives always brainstorm. Ideas, different ideas. I've got to innovate. I've got to change. I got to keep up. I've got to get ahead of the competitors.
I call myself an idea topper.
For a large number of companies, they have to innovate, right?
You do.
Yeah, so you do.
Be open-minded with the people that you bring into your organizations that you choose to hire as you are about the ideas that you have to generate to stay relevant in your industry.
I can credit Emerson College, for my creative ability, because when I was a student there, we were allowed to be open and creative, and that innovative process in which we as students, took on to create projects. It was a phenomenal thing. And I take that into the work I do today because it allowed me so much more freedom to expand my way of thinking and other people's way of thinking and pulling those ideas together to create that end product. And so I think in the business mode, business-wise, you need to have many, many diverse brains to create something beautiful.
100% agree.
Karen, one of the things that you had mentioned a bit ago was speaking to our listeners saying, hey, don't now go out and find that black person or that black friend, which I hear you. And as the white woman in the room, I'm not sure what to do next, and that's why.
Can I tell you?
Well, let me finish, and then you can.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm more and more aware of my bias, and I'm more and more aware of this bubble that I've lived in. Our pre-call that we got when we got to meet Wendy and kind of talk about this show, just to kind of say what's the format. I'm aware that I come from this white place and it's all I know, right? So when I'm on social media and I'm trying to be in relationship with my friends of color and all different ethnic backgrounds, there are some of my friends who are showing up very angry and understandably so, but I'm shying away from it, just like I would when there's somebody in my life who's angry and Caucasian. Like it's not that I avoid conflict. It's not that I avoid it, but I want to come into it level-headed. Yeah. I want to come into it mindfully and soulfully and take those deep breaths that you were encouraging us to take. So sometimes I'm feeling like I'm stuck in this. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I'm glad it's in the news. I'm glad we're finally saying enough is enough because it's been way past time. But I would love to hear more as your friend and someone who wants to continue to influence change. What else can I and should I be doing?
But I would think, so here's what I was going to say to you, Karen. Those of us, I'm going to a little bit speak for my African-American counterparts. We know who are on our side. We know our allies. We know who we can go to. And I knew I could go to you. I mean, primarily because I knew you need content. But besides the fact that I know you, I just know you're an ally. And if you are that person in the white world and your Black friend comes to you with a request, figure out how you can help them. Because that's where the change is going. And I hardly ever ask for help. That I've had to learn in the last couple of years to ask for help. It's been
because we're not used to doing that.
Nope. Well, because first off, we don't often get it, so you just learn to do it by yourself. But what I've learned is that you can't do it on your own. And so if I come to you and ask you for help, and you genuinely can't help, I understand. But if you don't want to help because you can't get by the discomfort, you're probably not going to like my follow-up response. And that's the reality. I've lost friends. And I don't really say I've lost them because I have high expectations for the people around me, whether they're my friends, whether they're, what part of the circle they're in. I have very high expectations. So I'm just saying to you as a listener, if your African-American, Asian, Hispanic, or Native American friend comes to you and has a request, try to figure out how you can help.
Yeah, I think, we don't ask just because we want to ask. There's always a need. For me and the work in which I do, I'm looking to support other people in the work in which I do. And especially my younger generation, where I want to support them and I see them grow in the right directions which they should go. And so I only ask, for purposes on things that I need to do, you know what I'm saying? And so when I'm looking for grants and things like that, I have to be face to face and have those conversations. And so it's good when you ask those questions, because we generally do have an answer. And sometimes it may not be what you want to hear.
Yep.
And you need to be honest and say, I'm willing to listen to you and hear you and not be defensive.
I love that, because part of what Wendy's saying is that fear or that discomfort. I've made a commitment in my professional and personal life over the last, 15, 20 years to get more uncomfortable outside of my little comfort zone, right?
Yes.
But not everybody is either taught to do that or takes personal responsibility to learn how to do that. But even in these conversations, I'm like, okay, I have to be prepared for you to cop me on something and to challenge me on something, and be willing to say, gosh, I didn't know, or, oh, wow, that's where I was coming from. Thank you for pointing it out. But not everybody is prepared or equipped to do it, which is why, Wendy, we appreciate the work that you do in this world.
Absolutely.
And Wendy and I are able to have this little group chat since she's on via Zoom. You just sent me a beautiful article. I'm assuming it's beautiful. I haven't opened it up yet. But can you tell us about the article and then chime in here?
Yeah, this is the thing. We are all Americans, and Americans are doers. Americans want to know, how do I do it? That's like the big question that all Americans are always asking. And for our white siblings that are saying to themselves, I'm not racist, I want to help, but I have no idea what to do. And yes, all of this deep emotion and anger and grief is super scary and overwhelming. Have I got an article for you? It used to be called 75 Things White People Can Do for Racial Justice. Now it's called 97 Things White People Can Do for Racial Justice, because it keeps growing and updating. And blessings to Corinne Shapak. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce her last name. She wrote this article back in 2017 and keeps expanding on it. So it's on Medium. We can put the link to this article in the show notes if anybody's listening.
We'll put it on our social.
Read 97 things that you can do as a white person to help dismantle systemic racial injustice. So there are things that you can do. And I'm going to say this other thing just to continue the conversation that Karen started. Black people are grieving and in pain. Black people are angry at the consistent murder with impunity and no consequence. Again, being treated as less than human and certainly less valuable in the society. So yes, your Black friends are super upset. This is not the time to say, please educate me, give me your energy when a person's in the middle of grieving.
Yeah.
That's inappropriate. And that's common sense when you take a step back and think about the other person instead of being so self-focused.
Yes.
So the key is, if you want to help, helping means you're not the center of the conversation or the university.
Ouch.
If you want to help, seek first to understand. That means being humble, being quiet, and listening.
That beautiful
And you
L word.
listen until the person is done talking. Don't interrupt. Don't ask for explanations. Remember, this is a person grieving, and not everyone is equipped to have a conversation. So I'm a safe person to have a conversation with because I'm a trained counselor. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology. I'm a spiritual teacher, and I'm a leader. I have a strong enough backbone to handle anything that somebody throws at me. I am not the average person walking down the street, but there are many people raising their hand and saying, I'm a safe place to have a conversation right now. So ask. It's so simple. We learn this in kindergarten. Is it okay for me to have a conversation with you about this? If the Black person is grieving and or too upset, they tell you. We're really straightforward. We all know that.
we can guarantee that.
Black women.
But I'm a passionate Black woman, okay? I'm very passionate.
Just be respectful.
Yeah, about what I do. I'm a passionate person. I am not an angry person. And so please understand, Black folks are passionate about the stuff that we do. And that's just the bottom line.
But here's the other thing that I want to, as a leave, because this is what I see in social a lot. People want really bad to fix it. And so I often hear white people saying, well, when is this going to end? Well, when will it stop? Well, when? And I say,
can you get over it?
No, this is what I say. This is not for you to decide right now. This is for Black people to decide, not for you. And I truly believe that right now is not the time for white people to be dictating to Black people what the solutions are. And anytime I hear that, I might trigger my angry Black woman.
Yeah, I get it. Just be mindful. Be a good listener. It's not about you. It never was. So, you can just step back and take a breather, take a break, and not let it be about you, but let it be about the heart of humanity. That's the key.
And taking a break, I'm hearing you all say, doesn't mean that I'm fading back and not standing up for my African-American siblings, as Wendy used. I love that term because we really are one.
Absolutely.
So taking a step back for me means, and I haven't seen it often, and when I have, I've said something, but making sure that I'm a voice and I'm maintaining strong boundaries as well. Wendy, lasting thoughts as we close up our segment today.
My answer to this, what we're experiencing, which I'm calling Civil Rights 2.0 global style, is you're experiencing two issues. African American people are fed up and are no longer putting up with the bad behavior and abuse. Really deeply bad behavior and abuse that is built into the way that the world runs on every level. And so there's a lot of grieving, and that's the area in which our white siblings have no say. You do not dictate how someone grieves or deals with their pain. You wouldn't tell someone who's a victim of a crime sexual crime or causing physical harm or a death when they should stop grieving. We all know that's inappropriate, when they should stop feeling bad. You're dealing with a group of people that have been abused. There is trauma. They are going to feel bad until they are healed. And on the flip side of that, racism is not a Black problem.
Right.
Nope.
It is a problem of our white siblings, because the white siblings are the source of the bad behavior and the bad thinking.
Yep.
So there is a work to do with our white siblings to become aware of how prolific systemic racism is, exactly how it's being perpetuated, and what they can do as individuals to contribute to the dismantling of systemic racism and healing the relationship with their minority siblings, people of color. Start with that article. People love to do stuff. There are nearly 100 things to do. Take action.
97.
Put your money where your mouth is if you want to be an ally.
Can we get 100?
Start doing business
We're working
with
on 3
Black
more.
businesses. Start breaking down racism and be strong enough to be uncomfortable.
Well said, Wendy.
Namaste.
Well said.
Beautifully said. Ladies, we are at the top of our hour, maybe even a couple minutes over, which is great because we've got that flexibility. Karen, you and I and Camilla, we've talked about this ongoing series, so we know we're at least going to have a couple more conversations.
Yeah.
So we encourage our listeners to check back with PhoenixBusinessRadioX.com, reach out to any of our panelists, and just engage in the conversation with us. We opened that invitation up last time, and we had several people sharing their insight and even concern and even some areas of disagreement. But what a great, rich opportunity for us to give ourselves permission to feel uncomfortable and practice that. On that note, I want to thank all three of you again for being here. And we'll close out the show. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio X, broadcasting live from within the Max 6 Conscious Workspace studio. Some media leans left, some lean right, and we lean business. Until next time, thanks for listening. Again, thanks for being here.